Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Lord of the Rings. Obviously, today, at the time we're recording this, we just saw the teaser, I guess you could call it, teaser little sizzle reel, not
Mm-hmm.
even a sizzle reel, just a teaser for the, what is it called? The Rings of Power.
Yeah.
Um, this is a nothing teaser, to be honest. Couple CGI shots, and what seemed like a younger Galadriel.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, what did you guys think? Did you get a chance to see this?
I did. Like you said, it was just like a CGI of like a ring being sort of made and the voiceover describing or reiterating how many rings each race got. And I guess we'll get the story of the rings being made potentially.
Celebrimbor.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Will? You're a Tolkien head. Why is that?
I don't know. It's just well, like we like kind of got a little bit of that. I guess like the whole prequel stuff. Not really like from the like set during that like prequel era, I guess, but I mean like the Shadow of Mordor and stuff like that. I kind of touched on that, but I don't know. It's kind of like strange. I like kind of looked into it a bit, and like I'm kind of curious to see like who's running the Tolkien estate, and like because apparently there was a little bit of a, I guess, a dispute between not Amazon but like the production company and with the Tolkien dispute as to how this was supposed to happen, but apparently like they're, I guess, on amicable terms or something like that. So
well, this would have been greenlit back when it was Chris, right?
Yeah, but it would have been greenlit when Chris was quite old. And
I think he even specifically said they're not allowed to adapt any of the novels.
Yeah.
Like they're not allowed to touch books 1 through 3 or the Silmarillion or any of that published works.
Yeah. So like that's why like I find it like very like curious, because I'm not sure if Christopher Tolkien had kids, and if he did, if they're even involved with any of that. So I don't know. It's kind of demented. I'm not really, I don't know. I'm very iffy about it.
So yeah, I'm not, I didn't know about all that.
I feel like I don't know. I kind of wish they would have like just not used some of the major characters. I feel like if they just would have did it almost like a period piece during that time, but with like completely different characters and different stories, it would have been, or maybe that's what it's going to be. I don't know, but it's kind of, it's just like off-putting to hear Galadriel, but not being Galadriel.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. So I'm always interested in going back to Middle Earth. That's for sure. Even the Hobbit movies, like, although I didn't enjoy them, they don't exist to me in the Peter Jackson canon. I refute them. But I am excited for this show cautiously though, because I'm excited to see it. And even something like Shadow of Mordor, right? Like not canon, but that was an enjoyable experience. And it fits itself within canon, similar to like the Witcher games, right? Like it's not technically canon, but if you've read everything up until that point, this also is in there. And so you can accept it because we're not getting any additions to Middle Earth or the Tolkien verse in literature. And I don't want to, like, especially now that Christopher has passed, it's done. It's over. Like, I don't think there's anybody else who's qualified to make additions to that. So saying that alone, like, does this series sort of rub me the wrong way that they can adapt things that are already in place? A little bit, but at the same breath, like again, Shadow of Mordor didn't bug me because I know it's not canon. But when something like is this big and the budget is this huge, and right from the get-go, this is not canon, it's like, I'm like, well, why the fuck do we care then? Like, well, it's probably going to be enjoyable, but it just feels like Amazon wanted their version of Game of Thrones, and as we know, like Netflix is struggling with it too, making a fantasy series and getting it to that place, like it's tough to do. So I think they went for the biggest ones. They went for Wheel of Time and they went for Lord of the Rings because those are probably the most recognizable fantasy projects. And I just think that was an odd choice. Maybe not so much Wheel of Time, but Lord of the Rings, I think, has such a definitive live action adaptation and so highly regarded and award winning that, like, why would you even try this? And if it's not the Peter Jackson team and Weta Workshop and all that, like, what is the point? So I want to see it because I love fantasy and I want to see live action fantasy, but I just like, what is it going to be? Like, I'm just confused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right, because there already exists a tone, a sound, a visual for the Lord of the Rings, and it feels so good compared to the book. Like it matches it so well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you're copying it directly, then you're just a derivative. But if you're not, then you're out of place. It's like,
yeah,
it's like you can't win with this almost.
Yeah. I feel like there's no way anyone's going to be happy with this show. Like Wheel of Time, I think is sort of in a different boat because if they did a 1-to-1 adaptation, fans of the book will be happy and people who watch it will probably be interested as well because the book series is highly successful, right? But because they diverged from the original story, that's upset the book fans. Not all of them, but there's a small chunk of book fans who are, pretty vocal and pretty upset about it. But for us who have never read them, like, we have our issues with the show, but overall we enjoyed it. So, that's one way to go about it. But for this to have like there exists an adaptation, there exists an original work, and you can't do either of these things. So what are you going to be? You're just another fantasy show that's claiming to be Lord of the Rings, but you don't have any of the approvals to be the Lord of the Rings. So it's not like this is a prequel to the Hobbit films or the Lord of the Rings films, and this is not a sequel or an adaptation of any of the novels. It's just a show set inside Middle Earth with characters we'll recognize, but plots that they're not allowed to use. So I'm just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Also, yeah, I don't know. Well, because that like the creation of the Rings of Power that comes in, I don't know, like book 3 or 4 or something like that in the Silmarillion. So I'm kind of like wondering if they're not allowed to use certain elements, like were they just like given like a handful of points and they're just like build around this, or
yeah, or I wonder if like when he said like you can't adapt the novels, that meant like books 1 through 3, The Hobbit, and like Children of Hurin is it, and I can't remember, Beren and Luthien and the Fall of Gondolin, right?
Yeah.
Like those ones with plots, like maybe those were off limits, but the Silmarillion is mostly just like a manuscript of fucking here's a bunch of things that happened. But I mean, even if they like the story that is in there, like they can't even use that. So like, what are we drawing from here? And Lucas, something you said reminded me of how I felt about seeing this teaser trailer and the music, like even the music. And then we did an episode about music people could check out, but the music in this trailer was trying to be Howard Shore's score so bad, but it couldn't be because I think that's tied up in licensing, right? Like I think New Line Cinema probably owns the rights to that or whatever, or 20th Century Fox, whatever the case is. And so Amazon can't use it. And so they're playing the same notes, but it's discordant and like different instruments. And like the flute that they used here was more something that you'd find like in a John Williams score. And it was just jarring. It was like, I know that you're saying this is Lord of the Rings, but the voice is wrong and the music's wrong. So I don't know what to do here. Like it's just everything's off-putting. So
yeah. That's, I mean, like if they would have kept, like if it was like, if the story's just placed in like the city of Numenor, and it's like almost like these characters are like a party of two, like a party to these events that are happening instead of being like actually there, I think would be a little bit better. Like if it's just like a random group of friends or etc., or like like some of like the, I don't know, like one of the people that are a part of like Elendil's group when they go exploring and stuff like that on the sea or something. But It's just like weird because it's just like, how could you top something that's already like top quality, top of the line adaptations? Like,
Yeah.
never, like, I don't. To me, it's just like why bother?
Yeah.
Like,
And I thought of that as well. Like, are we just going to see like all the falls of these kingdoms and what the rings did to them? Like with the title, I think that's like, I feel that's where it's going to go. But like, that is such an artistic sort of out there thing to adapt. Like, oh, I don't know, let's see a bunch of societies crumbling and diverging and falling apart. Like, to me, that doesn't really, it's not a plot. Like, I'd love to see it because I love Lord of the Rings, but like, I don't know if we're going to get that widespread audience that they're going for and hoping for with the budget that they're throwing at this thing. Like, like a Game of Thrones caught on and caught fire because it was interesting. Like the plot was like what drew people in. The fact that it was a fantasy almost takes a back seat. Whereas like this is Lord of the Rings. People are going in expecting Lord of the Rings, and the politics of the Peter Jackson films are very like irrelevant, I guess you could say. Like they come up like, I don't know, like men and elves don't see eye to eye, and that's very clear, and that's it. And dwarves and elves don't see eye to eye. That's all we really need to know. So to do a whole show about the politics of Lord of the Rings, I don't think that's what fans of the Lord of the Rings films are going to be like lining up to see.
Mm-hmm.
No.
It seems like a huge risk. It can go very wrong. Like I honestly can't even think of like a way it can go right. Like that's the thing. That's the sad part. That's why I'm so worried about it.
Okay, so that's actually a good question. Will, what would you like if nothing was off limits? What would you want this show to be?
I think it'd be interesting if they had it like start during the fall of Numenor, like skip the whole Ring of Powers, skip all of Sauron's deception, etc., and just like go straight to like a group of people like on the boats trying to escape. Because like Numenor is like Tolkien's Atlantis.
Yeah.
So when it gets blown up or it's sucked into the sea or whatever during this big catastrophe, they head east towards Middle Earth, and then so like I think it would be like kind of cool to see like this. I don't know, like if you have like a group of people or whatever, like basically just escaping on these boats, and then just like trying to, I don't know, figure things out from there. I think would be a little bit more interesting instead of just kind of going with a plot line that's already been kind of done with through like Shadow of Mordor and in the Shadow of War series. But like those were like pretty like, I don't know, like everything that all these forums and stuff like that I was a part of, like when they were released, like nobody really liked the story because it was just like so whack.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the like story elements and stuff like that. So like it just seems like weird for like, I guess the showrunners to be like, yeah, the story's already been kind of done before, and it was like nobody liked it, but now let's just do it again, but pour more money into it.
Yeah. What about you, Luca? Sorry, were you?
Yeah. Like I guess just my final point would just be like, just do it like a period, like do it like a period piece of like a group with all this stuff going on in the background instead of like people being involved at the center of it, like Galadriel and etc.
And you, Luca?
I honestly don't know, man. Like I don't know if I want this show. Like if nothing was off limits, just adapt the Rage of Dragons. Like
I mean Lord of the Rings.
I know, but that's what like
that's the right answer.
Like I would like, if anything, I'd rather have like adapt the Children of Hurin. Like you use one of the other books. Like, had they been allowed to, I would have rather them just like take a story that's already been written, has nothing to do with any of the characters we've seen in the Peter Jackson trilogy, and then just like completely disassociate with those films. Because if you try to do anything around those stories, like you'll be compared to it and you'll never live up to it. Like it's not possible. So I would have rather just seen a story completely divided from like the book that I keep thinking is the Children of Hurin, because I think that would have been a good adaptation and it would have drawn in that Game of Thrones crowd because it's so grimdark. Like that story is not a happy story. So I think that could have served well, but anything outside of that, I don't know if I want to see it, because I can't think of a way it can be done well. And there's so many other stories to adapt. Like, I would have rather just do something else. What about you, man?
Yeah, that's I don't know if I agree entirely. Obviously, if I had a choice, if I was at Amazon and being like, here's what we're going to throw $200 million at, I'm choosing Rage of Dragons as well. But because that's not part of the Tolkien estate, I would, I don't know. I think what maybe I would like to see is the Hobbit films erased from history and redone in a series. That would be fun. I don't know if you could stretch that book any longer than they tried to in the movies, but I think like a 10 episode Hobbit would be pretty fun. But next to that, I think I would actually like to see the Silmarillion, and I'd like to see like episode 1. We're getting the creation of Middle Earth and Iluvatar. That's his name, right? Will. Yeah, I'd like to see all that weird stuff, and then eventually get to the point where we're going on the journey, and but again, like, I just don't know if that's appealing to a wider audience, and so I think that's why they've gone this direction with the restrictions they had from the estate, and then trying to adapt Tolkien is hard. It is like, and I think that's why, like, it always feels like Peter Jackson and crew got lightning in the bottle that first time around, and they couldn't replicate it when they came to The Hobbit. Like, it just couldn't be done. There's a lot of things that went into how poorly those films turned out, in my opinion. But those first 3 films are really special because they pulled off an impossible thing. Even like we see Game of Thrones started on such a high, and halfway through was so good, and then eventually got worse and worse and worse, and then it's very divisive now, and I just think it's tough to really pull these things off. And so to try to adapt a nebulous sort of Tolkien verse, or it's like, oh man, you guys are really going for it, and there's so many ways this can fail. So yeah, I think that'll do for our conversation on the teaser trailer. I'm interested in seeing what it is, because I already have that subscription. So if it was a film, I would still go see it. I'm not gonna lie to you, but yeah. What do you got for us this week, Will? Stressed.
No, I don't know. I'm anxious and upset, but maybe that's how they're going to be pulling in their viewers, is like so many people that are upset and anxious that they just want to get the pain through. But yeah,
to that point, I'll say the one thing is, like I say to everyone who hates the Wheel of Time show, who like the books, it doesn't fucking matter. It's just a TV show, and the fact that we know it's not canon, like with the Wheel of Time, there's 14 books and they're a concise story. You can read those if you'd like. And for this show, the Tolkien estate said you can use our name and whatnot and our characters, but not our stories. So whatever. Thanks for the check. And this is not going to be canon. It's not part of the Peter Jackson canon. It's not part of the book canon. It's just a show called Lord of the Rings, and there's going to be characters we recognize. It's like a comic book,
Yeah.
I don't want you to turn Lord of the Rings into a Marvel movie. Like,
yeah. No, but all that to say, like, if it sucks, it shouldn't hurt our view of the things of Tolkien we already love, because it's not a part of it.
Yeah, of course not. It'll just hurt watching the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Middle Earth multiverse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I guess for my section today, Will's wondering why. Last episode we talked about I guess like real world